How you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing?
How you doing?
I'm gonna tell you right now, there are some things that you just don't need when you're through hiking the Appalachian Trail. I hope you all enjoy me sitting here in the middle of my backyard with my peach tree. Back there, there's like a little peach that started growing. So yeah, I'm pretending I'm in the middle of the woods, you know, even though I'm like in the Sunshine State. There are a few things that you really don't need when you do a through hike of the Appalachian Trail, and you may or may not have heard of some of them. Definitely stay until the end of the video because I'm going to talk about the most controversial part that you really don't need for your through hike. And so when I'm talking about you really don't need, it doesn't mean that you can't bring it. If it's something that you really want, you should bring it.
Oh, it's already been rotten.
But needing it is different than wanting it, and that's really the whole concept of today's video. You've probably heard of the first thing that you really don't need, which is a deodorant. Yes, you can bring it. If you want it, you should bring it. If you feel like the weight is worth it for you, do so. But on the Appalachian Trail, you really don't need deodorant. Why? Because all through hikers are smelly. Most people choose not to bring a deodorant, so then everybody smells kind of bad. So what's the purpose of you smelling good? Some people bring a deodorant because they're doing it for just really like feeling good about themselves rather than doing it for other people. So if that's the case, definitely bring a deodorant, but you really don't need to bring it just because you're gonna sweat, and as soon as you are back on trail after a 0 day, you're gonna smell. And a deodorant doesn't really take care of that based off of how bad we do end up smelling. The second thing that you really don't need is you really just don't need a second pair of socks. For the sense of through hiking, you really just need one pair of socks as long as you keep it clean, as long as you can take care of your feet. Some people bring a second pair of socks because if their one pair gets wet, then they try to switch it out with the other pair of socks. But ultimately, when it's a wet day, changing your socks is just going to make your second pair wet as well. So if you have a second pair for the sense of your foot health, I wouldn't really change it out during the day. I would probably just change it out at night, so I'd have a dry pair of socks at night. Once again, this is not a question of wanting it, it's a question of needing it, and you do not need a second pair of socks. And we are getting to the more controversial topics right now. When it comes to hiking the Appalachian Trail, you really don't need a satellite communication device. Now, I'm not talking about other trails like the Pacific Crest Trail or the Arizona Trail. I am talking in particular about the Appalachian Trail. You don't need it. Now, what is this device for? It is in case your cell phone doesn't have any connection, you can have something like a GPS communication device that communicates with a satellite, and if you need to get in contact with your family, you can contact them through this device, or in a case of emergency, you can contact emergency services. The Appalachian Trail is very, very well traveled. There are so many people on trail. And by the time you've started hiking 1 or 2 months especially, people know about you, they know of you. You probably will have like a hiking buddy, or at least if you don't have a trampoline or a hiking buddy, people will know about you and your whereabouts in general, especially the ones that are hiking kind of around you. And I showed it in one of my videos, is typically, especially at the beginning, you're gonna have a hiker behind you, just like a mile behind you or even ahead of you. There's always a hiker, especially at the beginning. So if something were to happen to you, you would, somebody would generally be able to like notice that there's something wrong. Somebody would see you injured and they could help you and things like that. Editing Julianne here, or some people call it future Julianne. I just want to add to that cellular connection on the Appalachian Trail is pretty good. There are some places up north that maybe you would have some problems with regard to connection, but most of the time, either myself or my trail family members, one of us had connection. So that's just an extra point with regard not really needing a like a Garmin or like a Zoleo or something like that. I don't want to, say that you don't need it, then you don't bring it, then you injure yourself, and then you have a hard time. Definitely bring it if you feel as though that is going to make you feel more secure. But I personally don't think a GPS communication device is necessary, especially now. The new iPhone 14 has a GPS emergency button, so if you are interested in having that, just don't get that GPS. It's a little bit more expensive. You're gonna have to pay like a monthly subscription and all of that. So if you just feel you want something like that, just upgrade your iPhone to the iPhone 14, and then it has that button with it. I am not sponsored by iPhone, so this is not something that I get a benefit from, but if I were to hike the Appalachian Trail, I wouldn't have a GPS communication device. I would just upgrade my phone to an iPhone 14. And now this is, again, I'm not talking about the Pacific Crest Trail. The Pacific Crest Trail has some crazy river crossings, and so personally I would feel more comfortable having some sort of satellite communication emergency button or something like that. And so, but for the sense of the Appalachian Trail, you really just don't need it. Did I say you don't need it? You don't need it. Doesn't mean you don't want it. You don't need it. And the next thing that you really don't need is to be in shape to hike the Appalachian Trail. It does help if you have a sense of strength in your legs. It does help if you have stamina, stronger ankles and things like that. I'm not saying that it wouldn't help, right? But I'm saying that it's not required. You don't need it. And ultimately, most people recommend for you to start out slow anyway at the beginning of the trail. I'm not saying that I do, but a lot of people say, take it easy at the beginning, hike like 8 miles a day and just stick to that. And I'm sure they do it with that accent too. So a lot of people tell you to start slow anyway. So then when you start slow, you're kind of getting your body in shape as that happens. So it doesn't really make sense for people to say, hey, you need to really be in shape, but take it slow at the beginning. It just doesn't, that doesn't make any sense. You essentially maybe either or. If you're super in shape, I would highly recommend do more miles if you feel as so. But if you're not in shape, just go slow and the trail will get you into shape. Georgia is so beautiful. It does have some difficult parts for sure, but I think that Georgia is ultimately you getting ready for what's to come, like North Carolina and everything like that. So do you need to be in shape for the Appalachian Trail? I don't think so. I think it helps, but you don't need to. There was a butterfly, see? Oh. So one more thing that you don't need for the Appalachian Trail, a lot of hikers are really worried about whether they need to bring bear spray or not. And for the Appalachian Trail, you do not need bear spray. I'm not a bear specialist, but I did come across at least 11 bears on my Appalachian thru hike. I don't know, I should have counted them, but I think it was around 14 to 16, but I'll say at least 11. And none of those bears were aggressive. At least 90% of the bears ran away from me, because I'm scary, but they ran away from us. And the other 10%, those bears were literally just staring at us, kind of like, hi, who are you? They were more looking at you. They weren't really wanting to be aggressive. We did come across mother bears with their cubs. They all seemed rather calm as long as you didn't disturb them. So bear spray is not necessary for the Appalachian Trail because them bears are very, very scared of humans. There are some ways for you to behave when you come across bears, do stand your ground, make yourself bigger, maybe with your trekking poles, make loud sounds, growl at them or scream at them so that you seem intimidating, and that's definitely going to get them to run away from you unless you do something like maybe pet a baby cub, you might get in trouble with a mama bear then, right? But in general, they're just gonna run away from you. And the last, most controversial item that you really don't need for the Appalachian Trail is you don't need a gun. If you want it, you should bring it. I don't know what the laws are, because I do know that some states don't even allow you to carry it as you're hiking through it. But I mean, I'm not sure. Like, somebody might be able to educate us in, the comments below, which I'm sure I will be educated on. But when it comes to needing a gun, you do not need one. Are there situations where people have interactions with dangerous people or come across wildlife? Yes, there are situations where you can come across such things, and having a gun could help. And there's been people that have had dangerous situations happen. A few hikers have been killed by other people, but that's kind of like a rare occurrence when it comes to Appalachian Trail, and the Appalachian Trail itself is way more secure and safe than real life. And needing a gun, you don't. Now, guys, I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the right to bear arms. So I hope you understand what I mean with that. I am not against bearing arms at all. I'm so for it. I have a criminal justice degree, so I don't really care. I'm talking about the fact that you really just don't need a gun. It doesn't harm for you to maybe have some sort of weapon or protection device. I have a knife, and I felt pretty comfortable having a knife, and I never felt like I really needed a gun per se. Doesn't mean that it wouldn't help you if you got into a certain situation, but you really just don't need a gun in particular for the Appalachian Trail. The place is safe. It really is. There's some weirdos, but I've never felt threatened to the point where I either thought, okay, I'm going to take my knife right now, or where I felt like I needed a gun in particular. So you just don't need the gun. Alright, so that's it with regard to things you really don't need for the Appalachian Trail. And stay tuned for some really good stuff coming up pretty soon. And thank you, as always, to my subscribers who've been with me since the beginning, and my amazing patrons. Without them, I would not be able to plan future thru hikes. So thank you so much.